right, looks like we have people funneling in here, Jamie. I'll go ahead and get started and do some quick introductions. My name is Luke. I am the co-founder of Enhanced Prep and the vice president of partnerships. We are a tutoring company that focuses on not just test prep, so SAT, ACT, but also all academic support. And we are excited to have Jamie Moynihan here from Momentum College Counseling. Jamie is a friend of ours and a partner that we have worked with over the last couple of years, and excited to have him here to talk about building elite college applications and really setting yourself apart as you're looking to prepare those applications and get those acceptance letters. So I'll go ahead and let Jamie take over. But first, if you have questions, please feel free to put them in chat, or there's also the Q&A button at the bottom. Please feel free to submit your questions there, and we will definitely get those answered for you. We do have a quick poll question that I like to ask just so that we can get an idea of who's here. And just two quick questions. One, who are you? Are you a student, a parent, counselor, or teacher? And then what grade level? I'll give you a moment here to fill those out, and then we'll get started. All right, so it looks like we have a well-balanced group here of parents and students in all different grade levels. So we'll go ahead and Jamie, if you want to get started.
Sounds great. No problem. Thanks, Luke. And thanks everybody for joining. Happy to be able to connect tonight and talk a little bit about how our organization works with students, but also giving you some tips about things to think about to work as efficiently and effectively as possible in developing your extracurricular and academic profile as it relates to the admission process. Just as a little bit of background, my name is Jamie Moynihan. I've worked in college admission and college counseling for the last 17 years. I've reviewed applications for 4 different universities, most recently the University of California at Berkeley. I'm the founder of Momentum College Counseling. We offer comprehensive college consulting for students and families at all grade levels, as early as grade 8 all the way through grade 12. And one of the things we'll talk about a lot about tonight is goals and what are some of your goals. And those goals are really dependent on the types of services and programming that we offer to students. So we'll talk a lot about those things as we move forward, and looking forward to getting as many questions as possible. So feel free to fire them off as we get going. So let's talk a little bit about what do we mean by developing an elite application. And I think one of the things that's changed a lot over the last 15 years or so is the number of applicants that are applying to top 25, top 50 colleges and the quality of those applicants. And I use my time at Berkeley as a point of reference. At that point, there were about 100,000 students who were applying to UC Berkeley. And when I was reviewing applications, I'd say probably like 60 to 70% of those students are academically capable of being admitted to the universities. But the institution at that point was only admitting about 10 to 12%. And so that means there's about 50 to 60,000 kids who are academically capable of being admitted, but they are not admitted. And so today we'll talk a little bit about like why that is and what are some of the differentiators for students when they are applying. And those things are dramatically continuing as we move forward. You see top 15, top 25 colleges with admit rates under 10%, under 5% oftentimes. And so really thinking a little bit about how do you engage in the things that you like to do in a way that will differentiate you from your peer group and help you to stand out within this admission process. And I think one of the things that we really need to understand is what are the types of questions that colleges and universities are asking. And I think this is a huge kind of misstep that students and families make in this process. More often than not, and I'd say 99% of the time, unless you're working with a college counselor, and even if you are working with a college counselor, oftentimes college counselors don't even have you do this, but more often than not, students and families are not even reading the questions that colleges are asking until they are actually applying to college. And so you're doing all of these things and feeling like you need to be in 100 different groups and be the president of this club and do all these volunteer hours and be on this athletic team and create these organizations and all that kind of stuff. But then you're not really even understanding the types of questions that are being asked. And I think one of the things that happens is students and families oftentimes look at the admission process, or they think of it as a resume. So in their mind, they're going to say, I'm going to do all of these things. It's going to look amazing on my resume. These people are going to look at it and say, wow, look at all these amazing things you've done. You're admitted. Or they chase accolades like, I got this award. I was nominated for this. I'm in this leadership group, whatever. And they think that an admission officer is going to look at that and say, wow, you're admitted. The irony is that the vast majority of colleges and universities don't even allow you to submit a resume when you're applying to college. It's not even part of the application. When you apply, there's something called the common application, which the majority of schools utilize. In the common application, there is an activity list, so you certainly can include your activities. But in that list, you're only given 10 activities that you can talk about, and you get only 150 characters to describe those activities. Characters, not words. So we're talking about like 2 sentences. So when I read applications and when I would review applications, I'd probably spend 65 seconds looking at an activity list. I'm going to glance at it, get a gauge for like what are the things you're doing, and then we're moving on. So the way that our program is designed and the way that I think about college counseling and supporting students is understanding, working from the end result backwards. So understanding where do admission officers spend the bulk of their time. And the vast majority of admission officers are going to spend the bulk of their time reviewing the short answer and extended essay questions that they're asking. And if you look at any top 50, top 25 type of college, the majority of the types of questions they're asking are very similar. How have you pursued an academic area of interest outside the classroom? What's a community that you're a part of? How have you demonstrated leadership? Things like that. The problem for students is that the majority of the things that they're doing in high school tend to be done within the context of their high school or their peer group. So their responses are things like, I'm the vice president of the robotics club, or I'm the captain of the tennis team, or I'm in student council. I'm not trying to minimize those things necessarily or say they aren't important, but the reality is there's literally thousands of kids who have those exact same experiences. And so the narratives become very similar. So what we talk a lot with students about is how can you leverage the resources that you have, the roles that you have within these organizations, the things that you're doing to create narratives that will differentiate you comparatively to your peers. And I'll give you some examples as we move forward about what some of those things are. But I want to start by understanding like the types of questions that they're asking are these sort of standardized questions. And then the responses that the majority of applicants are giving are contextually very similar to their peers. So things like I'm in student council. We've done fundraising. I did this summer program for 2 weeks. I did a 2-week internship with my dad's company. I'm on the robotics team. Things like that. Those are not things that are what I describe as elite comparatively to your peers. And what you want to think about is how can I develop those elite areas? And I don't need you to metaphorically find a cure for cancer, right? Like I need you to think about how can I demonstrate my ability to think critically, to be innovative, and to do something that as an admission officer, they're going to look at and say like, oh, wow, that's interesting. That's a unique way to pursue it. Because if you put yourself in the shoes of the admission officer, right, they're reading 40, 50, 60 applications in a day. And how many of them are, I'm on the tennis team, I'm in student council, I've done this program, I started this organization. They tend to be very standardized. And so what you're trying to do is create a story that they're going to look at and say like, oh, that's interesting, that's unique, that's not something I've seen today or not something I've heard of before. And again, we'll talk a little bit about how to do those things as we move forward. But I think for kids, they feel like I need to win the national science fair, or I need to find a cure for cancer. I need to be published in the Harvard Medical Journal. That's not what the expectation is, but it's thinking a little bit about how can you build your story, your narrative, and your brand in ways that are unique to you, but also things that are authentic and that you like to do. Authenticity is a really important part of this. And I think that that goes back to a lot of the things that we think about, where I'll have students oftentimes that even if they come in for like a consultation or before they sign up to start working with us, they'll say things like, "Okay, well, I got the Presidential Service Award last year. That's great, right? And that'll look good for colleges." And the answer is like, sure, it does. There's nothing wrong with it necessarily inherently, but the point is not the award that you got. I need to understand, like, what did you do? What's the story that you now have? Is it just that you showed up X amount of times and you got this award, or did you build a new program within the organization that you were working with? Did you get more people to get involved? Did you create partnerships? Like, what were the things, the roles that you had within it? And again, we'll talk a little bit about what those things can look like here in just a minute. So when we talk about what colleges are looking for, I think about this as essentially every college in the country is going to talk about their commitment to four things. They talk about their commitment to critical thinking, their commitment to innovation, their commitment to interdisciplinary learning, and their commitment to diversity. Basically, every single college is talking about those four things, and the questions that they ask within their applications tend to reflect those key areas of emphasis. So, what we want to think about as you're developing your overall profile is, what does your academic rigor look like? Not only within the context of your high school, but have you taken things beyond the context of your high school? Are there project areas that you can point to? Are there ways that you've gone beyond the things that are even available within your school through summer opportunities or independent studies, things like that? Again, that doesn't mean that you need to have 17 AP courses before you're applying. It just means that you need to think about, how can I develop a curriculum or an academic profile that is rigorous compared to my peers?
Hey,
Um,
Jamie,
l- yeah, of course.
we do have a question about academic rigor.
Cool. Yeah.
What one of the question that came in is, I attend a school that offers a full IB diploma and a full array of AP classes. Which one will Ivy League see as more rigorous, especially since my school is offering both?
Yeah.
Um, the the person saying that they really haven't found a conclusive answer to this question.
Yeah. So I will give you an answer that maybe isn't like fully conclusive, but I think it will direct you in the right way. So there isn't anything inherently wrong with IB versus AP. Like I would look at the HL courses that you're taking in your IB curriculum the exact same as I would look at AP courses that you're taking within an AP curriculum. The challenge with IB is that you are typically restricted to only three HL courses. Some schools will allow you to take a fourth. If you are at a school that will allow you to take a fourth, I think in four IB HLs versus four AP courses or even five AP courses, I'm totally fine with that. You are going beyond the context of the requirements of your school to take the most rigorous curriculum available. If they don't allow you to take the four HL courses, then it's harder to differentiate yourself within the context of your the rigor of your curriculum comparatively to anybody else that's taken an IB program. So there are certainly like stronger HL courses than others. So if you're taking, physics, math, and English, like those are three really hard and well understood HL courses. Um, but I think it's more difficult to differentiate yourself. With the APs, you could take as many APs theoretically as you wanted to. You tend to be able to take them a little bit earlier, so you could start that within your sophomore year. So I think that having the AP curriculum allows you a little bit more flexibility to create differentiators within your program and your profile. But it really depends on like how you would shape the long-term plan. So when I work with students, we'll start with like course selection, not just for if you're in 8th grade, we wouldn't just talk about course selection for 9th grade. We'd talk about how does this impact grade 10? How does this impact grade 11? How does this impact grade 12? So long-term planning. What you take in grade 10, I don't particularly care what the exact courses are. What I really care about is by the time you're applying to college, what does your overall program look like, and what does the rigor look like? So it's a long-winded way of saying, like, there isn't necessarily one that is better inherently, but I do think that an AP curriculum tends to give you a little bit more flexibility in the courses that you're taking, and more opportunities to take more advanced courses. That's the way I would think about that. So thinking a little bit about like leadership experience, and I think one of the things that oftentimes gets misconstrued is leadership does not necessarily mean you have a title. So I hear this all the time with, especially parents will say like, oh, they're in these clubs, but they don't have a leadership role. That doesn't necessarily mean anything as far as like what the title is. It's more about what have you done with it, with the resources that you have. So if you are just a member and then you start a partnership program with a local organization that increases the visibility of the organization or the enrollment, or it allows people to have do internships or like partner programs, things like that. That's leadership. And so it's more about taking initiative than it is the title. And then the other thing that we really want to think about is sort of that like civic engagement side of things. So how have you engaged in social entrepreneurship? How have you created change within your community? So those are the types of things, and, and again, I'll give you an example here on the next slide on how to specifically do that. But those are the ways that you want to think about it, and we also want them to be authentic, so to come across and be presented as truly your own. So let's think a little bit about how we craft an extracurricular strategy and an extracurricular profile. The way that we operate when we work with students is we try to identify 3 or maybe 4 key areas of emphasis that are going to be your primary stories and your primary areas of focus. Those should be the things that you're prioritizing. Anything you're doing on top of that is like gravy on top. It's fine, but it shouldn't take away from your ability to pursue these couple of areas. One of them is generally academic. One of them is some sort of like leadership, or taking an initiative on something. And then one of them is being innovative. And we'll think a little bit about like having an interdisciplinary lens, things of that nature. For us, we build this into our programming. So when you sign up for a comprehensive college counseling program, not only are you working with a college counselor, you're also working with somebody on who's a profile development specialist to work on like civic engagement or social entrepreneurship. You'll also work with somebody on an academic project area. So we're building this into your curriculum and into the program so that you have guidance on specifically how to do these types of things. But for this program, we'll talk a little bit about examples at each of these spaces. So an academic area of focus typically starts or stems from some sort of project area where you're maybe you're doing research, or you're creating some kind of like proposal within your community. It could be any number of things, and I can give you a couple of examples of what that would look like. One of them, a student that I worked with. He started in his grade 9 year doing a research project. He wrote a paper on it, but we thought like, we want to be able to advance that a little bit more. And so instead of just writing a paper, we talked about why don't you start like a YouTube channel to talk about some of the research work that you did. And his work was on different elements of head trauma and how it can impact the brain and things of that nature. And so he started a YouTube channel where he did these short videos talking about different elements of head trauma. He would talk about like different injuries in the NFL on a weekly basis, things like that. Then we said, okay, how do you advance that even further? Why don't we reach out to professors who have done research work within a similar space, and you can interview them on your YouTube channel. So now he has this really unique profile and program where he's done research on this specific area. He's got all these followers that he's created on YouTube. He's got dozens of videos that he's established, and he's interviewed about a dozen different professors. He went to Stanford, so things worked out pretty well for him. So my point is, like, it's not just that you did a research project and we check the box. It's that you do the research project, then like, what's the next step? And then once you do that, what's the next step? How do we elevate these things? Leadership is another big way to think about it. And again, it's not simply about titles. It's about your initiative. How do you dive into these things? How are you persistent with it? An example of that is I worked with a student who is at Vanderbilt University. She received a full ride scholarship to Vanderbilt. She was trying to lower the municipal voting age in her town from 18 to 16. So she did research work on like, why would you want to have 16-year-olds vote? Are they ready to vote? How would that impact things? There's a lot of voting that's happening related to schools and funding for young people operations, things of that nature. So she did surveying. She received signatures. She presented in front of the school board, in front of the town hall. Did I think she was going to lower the municipal voting age in her town from 18 to 16? No, I definitely did not think that that was necessarily going to happen. That was a little bit of a pipe dream, but she got a lot of traction on it. She got a lot of support on it, and she got a lot of people involved. And now she has this story when she applies to college of, I really believe in the ability for young people to vote at an early age. I think it's important for long-term voting, and within this country, here are some of the reasons why. I then created this initiative where I reached out to people within my town. I met with the school board. I created a partnership with this town selectman. We worked, collaborated to do X, Y, and Z. We got X number of signatures. I presented it at this forum. That's an elite level story, right? So it's not necessarily that you even accomplished what the long-term goal was, but it's that you have this narrative and this experience that you can point to that an admission officer is going to look at and be like, I've never seen somebody try to lower the municipal voting age. I've never seen somebody try create a YouTube channel where they interview dozens of professors within their area of focus. So these are just things that you can think a little bit about. How do you think critically in the ways that you're doing them? And then the final one, innovation, is really, I think about that as sort of like either identifying areas that are things that are done inefficiently or ineffectively, or trying to utilize sort of like an interdisciplinary lens. And so, an example of a student who did something related to that, he was really interested in computer science and developing applications and things of that nature. And he was getting really frustrated because he couldn't get into his high school to meet with his guidance counselor. The guidance counselor just always had times on their calendar that were blocked, and he wasn't really understanding like how to go about it. So he created a an app that his high school could use that would more efficiently and effectively allow students to sign up for specific slots. If somebody missed the slot, then the other students would be aware that that time was available. They could go in and see them. And he saw the school saw a significant increase in the number of slots that were used for guidance counselor meetings, and then the effectiveness as far as like people not missing meetings and things like that. So that would be an example of, I see this as a challenge. I see this as something that I think I could do more efficiently or effectively, and you create those things. And so for us, our programming is really designed to help kids to think about, what do you like to do? And then how can we identify project areas, two, three, maybe four at the most, that reflect these areas of emphasis, and that will be your primary areas of focus within your application. So again, I don't need students to do 25 different things. I don't need you to be at 100 different clubs. I don't need you to win the Presidential Service Award. I don't need you to win the state science fair. If you do those, that's great. But we also really just need you to think about, how can I engage in the things that I like to do in ways that that other people are not doing them. And I think that's, it's hard. It's hard for kids, and it's hard for families, because I have three kids, and my wife and I talk about this all the time. Where like everything nowadays is done in like boxes. Like everybody's in a group, so they're on this team, they're in this club, they're in this organization. It's a lot different than maybe when even I was growing up, and things were a little bit more independent. And I think nowadays, because things are so competitive, it's really hard when kids are always doing these things in their boxes. So what we talk about is, We actually want to remove you from the context of your peer group to do these things that are independent, individualized, and specific to you. And it all comes down to like, what are the goals, right? So this is another thing that I like to mention, because not everybody in this session is aspiring to go to Harvard, Stanford, Princeton, and Yale. Like maybe a lot of you are, but there's also a lot of kids who are like, look, I want to go to, my local state college. I want to go to, maybe a top 50, top 75 college and those kinds of things. That's great. So when we work with families and we meet with families, we talk about what are your goals. And if the goal is, I want to go to maybe a great school like Villanova is a great school, but you probably don't need four things. You probably need two. And so we would talk to you about like, here are the ways that we would do that. Here are the things that you want to focus on. And so everybody's a little bit different. So understanding what is required based on your goals, I think, is really important. And thinking about it that at an early stage is also really effective as well. And if you're in grade 12, and you have some of these things, or you're entering grade 12 and think about the application process, how do I present these things at an elite level? How can I maybe utilize the summer to take the things that are doing maybe very well and make them elite comparatively to my peers? And so we work with students at all levels as far as that's concerned. I know we want to take questions and everything, want to be cognizant of time. But just to kind of recap, the authenticity is critical. And I'll go back to the example of the National Service Award, again, Presidential Service Award, not saying that is not a positive thing, but it's less about the accolade that you have achieved and more about what you've done, what your role is, what your story is. If you do a research project and you get published in a high school journal, that's great. But what I'm really more interested in within the application is, how did you pursue this in a unique way? How did you think critically? How did you use your resources? What did you learn from that experience? So it's more about that narrative piece. I think being deliberate is really important as well. So thinking about what are the 3 or 4 areas that I'm going to try to emphasize, and you don't need to figure that out in grade 9. Think about in grade 9, like maybe what's one, then in grade 10, what's another one? Then as you get to grade 11, can I enhance some of these areas, or do I want to add another piece? So it doesn't all need to be ironed out as a 14-year-old. You can build things organically over time, and that's going to help to build that authenticity as well. But being very intentional in how you think about your extracurriculars is important, because the reality is kids nowadays have very little time. I mean, all the time I talk to families that are like, they have no time. They're very busy. And I 100% understand that. And so as a student, you want to think more about like, how can I use my time as efficiently and effectively as possible? Does it make sense for me to, um, uh, I talked to somebody today who's like, I don't really like playing violin, but my mom thinks it'll look good on my college application. Do I need to keep playing violin? Well, violin's taking up a lot of time. You don't like doing it and you're not doing it at an elite level. No, I probably wouldn't play violin. And so thinking about like, how are you using your time as effectively as possible is really, really important. And understanding like, what are the questions? So that's a good part to start at. What are the questions that our colleges that are being asked? And then making sure that you have messaging to respond to each of those types of questions. So I know that's a lot of information in a very short amount of time. Would be very happy to meet with anybody. As Luke had mentioned, we partner with Enhanced Prep, so offer free consultations to students and families to understand how we work with them and what that program would look like, and for you specifically, like understanding what your goals are. And we basically then create a proposal. There's a lot of companies out there that'll say college counseling for a 10th grader is X amount of dollars. That's not the way that we operate. We look at it as like, what's going to be needed for the student, and what are the goals and how do we get you there. Would certainly encourage everybody to schedule a consultation. There's a couple different ways. You can either scan that QR, you can use the bit.ly link, or you can schedule at momentumcollegecounseling.com. Would be happy to talk through how we would work with your family and learn more about what some of your goals are.
So Jamie, one of the things, I'm glad you brought up the how busy students are. And we get students all the time where I'm just asking the question of when do you sleep?
Yeah.
You're on it two travel leagues and competitive sports, and you're volunteering, you're doing all that kind of stuff. Um, how how does your team help them figure out which ones should be their focus
Totally.
as they're preparing for that?
Yeah, totally. And when to do them too. So I think that maybe that was something that I kind of jumped over, but I think what's also very important is like I don't need you to do all three or four of these things over the course of 4 years. A lot of these things are going to build. So we would say, during this semester, I want you to work with a profile development specialist to work on this fundraiser campaign that we've talked about, or this speaker series that we've talked about, or whatever, and they'll help you to build that out. And then as you get into the summer, we'll say, okay, now I want you to work with this research mentor so that you can have this research project and you can start this YouTube channel and whatever it may look like. So I think that that's a really important part, is that not all of these things need to be done, in unison. And I think for a lot of kids, getting the ball moving on some of this stuff is the hardest thing. So
Mm,
like once it starts to kind of take motion and build out a little bit, then it's not running independently. But the hardest thing is getting these things off the ground. And then once they've gotten off the ground, you can also, give other people other responsibilities and sort of oversee how the program operates. So it's like you're more of the project manager than maybe like the direct person. So yeah, we talk a lot about now is a good time to do this. And, Luke, I mean, we talk a lot with students to say, okay, now's a great time. Like you need to focus on your test prep at this point. And then let's pull some of these things backwards, some of these other areas, or put them on a pause, or maybe it's not like the primary focus. So that's certainly a big piece of it.
yeah, and we had a question come in that says, are activities outside of the field that they want to go into uh, for college beneficial? For example, I want to go into CS, but I also am a national ranking Philharmonic Orchestra and a state level varsity swim captain. How useful are those things to their
Yeah.
application?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And I actually should have mentioned this during the presentation too. One thing that I think a lot of college counselors do a terrible job with, frankly, is they talk about the developing your profile as if everything needs to be in the exact same lane, and as if like you need to at 14 years old know exactly what you want to do for the rest of your life. That is not even remotely the way that a college application is read. And if you are talking to any college counselors that are saying that, like, run the other way. That is just not the way that it operates. So think about the questions that are being asked, right? So the question that colleges are asking from a narrative standpoint are, how have you pursued your academic area of interest? Okay, cool. Well, I can talk about that. I have done a CS project related to X, Y, and Z. Then there's going to be a question about what's a community that you're a part of. Well, music has been a huge part of my life. I've come to be able to collaborate and work in partnership with musicians across diverse ages and regions, through my engagements in different ensembles. And then there's a question about like leadership. So okay, and I'm leading this organization. So it doesn't all need to be in unison. Sometimes people have profiles that are really focused in one area, and that's totally fine. We talk a lot about like how do you take this primary area that you want to focus on and really build that up. But I would say the majority of successful applicants that I work with have a couple of different interests. We may talk about like how do you kind of conjoin those and make that more of like an interdisciplinary piece of your story. But I would never tell a student if they like love a particular area and like it's not directly related to their academic focus. I would never tell them not to do it. That they should absolutely continue to do it, and do it at what I would describe as an elite level.
Yeah, we always talk to students about, having that academic curiosity, right? Pushing
Hmm.
beyond what, necessarily is offered within your school. If you're really interested in something and even the local community college offers a class in it, take that
Yep,
and build your resume and curiosity that way. The schools like to see that it's not just this, right? You're not hyper
totally,
focused on one thing, but you have a curious mind that's looking to expand, right?
totally. Yep.
Um, and I know you start working with students. I mean, your website says as early as like eighth grade and all that kind of stuff. What are
Yeah.
some of the things that you're working on with those early students, eighth, ninth grade? What are some of those things that you focus on?
Yeah, so I think about grades 8 and 9 as skill building, right? You're not going to in grade 9, the things that you're doing are probably not going to be pillars of your college application, right? Hopefully things that you do in grade 10, 11, and into grade 12 become like the primary areas of focus. Having said that, the things you do in grade 8 and 9 impact what you can do in grade 10, which impacts what you can do in grade 11, which impacts what you do in grade 12. Um, in grade 8 and 9, you're probably not ready to have like a high level academic project area until maybe like the back end for some kids. But you're never going to be able to get there unless you build the skills. So a lot of what we talk about with grade 8 and 9 students is build skills. So we would talk about, okay, are there courses that you can take to develop your areas of interest that are interdisciplinary in nature? Things like computer science, things like business, entrepreneurship, economics, psychology, those types of things that you can do really regardless of what your area of focus is. And then we would also talk a little bit about how can we maybe start to build some of these foundational areas. So the civic engagement piece can definitely start in grade 9. I have a student right now who started a fundraising program in grade 9. In grade 9, they probably raised like, I don't know, 2,500 bucks. But now they have this thing that they've already started. So then in grade 10, that increases to like $10,000. In grade 11, that increases to like 20. She just did it this past year or this past month, and it was up at like $55,000 that she raised. I don't expect a grade 9 student to raise $55,000 for cancer awareness or anything like that. But I don't think you're going to be able to do that in grade 11 or 12 unless you have sort of the stepping stones. So we talk a lot about skill building and establishing those foundations that you can then build upon as you move forward.
That's great. All right. And I'm not seeing any other questions. If there are questions, please feel free to put them in the Q&A or in the chat. Um, What are some other things, Jamie, that you think are really important for students and for parents as they're starting to navigate, looking at colleges and looking at some of the things that are really important to this process?
Yeah, I think researching colleges and understanding how are you building your list is a really important part of this. So I think frankly it's something that students and families do pretty poorly most of the time when they do it independently, because what happens is they base their decisions on where they're applying on sort of generic things like what is the US News and World Report ranking? What did my uncle say about this school? Where did a neighbor go? Like these kind of arbitrary things. And I'm not saying that having other people's perspective isn't can't be valuable, but you need to understand programmatically what's available at a specific school and what type of learner are you. So we talk a lot about like where would a student thrive, and like I've had families that will have consultations with us, and they'll say, "Yeah, I'm really interested in Columbia and Cornell." Well, those are like two of the most different colleges you could possibly think about. So, like that is just that means you haven't done your research on schools. So we teach kids how to and families how to research colleges. So understanding, programmatically what's available. Are there internships that you're particularly interested in? Are there professors you want to work with? Are there study abroads, living learning communities, co-op programs? Whatever, and sort of understanding what's available, and I think that's helpful in a couple different ways. Obviously, it's helpful to help kids understand what is college, what's out there and available to you. But I think even just as important is most colleges will ask some variation of why do you want to go here on their application. And if you say, I really want to go to Columbia because I love New York City and it has a good biology program, probably not something that's going to be like an elite answer comparatively to your peers. So being able to gain an understanding of like what do I want to take advantage of? How can I build off of the things that I've already done throughout high school? How is this school going to be consistent with the way that I learn and I think and align with my values? I think all of those things are really important. So helping them to navigate that initial process is really pretty critical.
Yeah, I think I have five daughters myself, and I had two of them transfer from their first colleges to another
Mhm.
university, and it was that not truly understanding. We did school visits, we did all that
Yep.
kind of stuff, um, but really what was important to them once they were there changed,
Yeah.
and it was interesting to watch that, and so for our youngest daughter who just got accepted and to an honors program and
Mhm.
heading off to college in the fall, she did a lot more research, a lot more in
Yeah.
depth. Had her working with someone in order to make sure that we were pointing her in the right direction, and she's in love with the school she's going to,
Yep.
and is in an honors program and really found a good place for her. But it's something that as a parent, we made that mistake of not making sure we were utilizing the resources around us and the people around us in order to help guide our kids. And I think that's a really important thing of as a parent of let's help set our kids up for success because it is
Totally.
let's not just play the name game, right? Like
Yep.
the brand game, um, and help them find that right fit.
Yeah, and I think it's I kind of laugh at like you'll hear people all the time they'll say to high school kids like, "Oh, what kind of school do you want to go to?" And I just think what an unfair question that is to ask 16, 17-year-old who's never gone to college before. Like they have I don't know, this is a whole new world. I have absolutely no idea what I want
Sure.
to do. So helping them to understand, what are the differences between these types of schools? And then we can say like, look, if you love this internship program that Stanford has, where you can go to France and work with this specific company for 6 months. We can say, cool. Here are 8 other schools that have a similar program that are not on your list right now, and so you can build your list organically based off of the programs and things that are available, as opposed to like how most people do it, looking online and rankings and what did somebody else say about it, and your perceived prestige of a school and things like that.
Sure. Well, great. I don't see any other questions, but I just wanted to thank you, Jamie, for your time and the great information. These are very similar conversations that we have with families, and at Enhanced Prep we are not the experts on college admissions. That's why we have partners like you and Momentum to help our families as they're navigating this, and I encourage everybody to reach out to you if they have questions and schedule that consultation because I know they'll be in good hands when you do that. And I appreciate your time. Thank you, Jamie.
Thanks so much, Luke. I appreciate everybody spending the time, and look forward to talking with many of you in the coming days.
All right. Thank you.